We are in that point in the offseason where there is just absolutely nothing going on for most NBA teams, and that includes the Cleveland Cavaliers. There ain't nothing going on right now. No real rumors, no news to report on. We're just at that point in the offseason where there just is nothing going on. So what better time than now than to ask you guys a few questions. I want to get your opinion on a couple of subjects in particular. So I'm going to jump right into it with my first question. My first question for you is, what would you like to see the Cleveland Cavaliers do with the remaining roster spots? Now, as it stands right now, there are currently 16 players on the active roster. However, that does not mean the regular season roster. That does not mean the typical 15-man roster. That includes the two-ways. So really, we only have 13 players rostered, and we have 3 two-ways, with those being JT Thor. They recently brought over Luke Travers. Y'all know I'm very excited about that young man. And Emoni Bates, who is coming back on his second two-way for the consecutive season. Now, on that regular season, or the regular active roster, as I like to think about it, it's Darius, Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert at the moment. You have George Niang, you have Dean Wade, you have Jalen Tyson, who's drafted 20th overall. You have Ty Jerome, who many people still just forget about. I think he could play a bigger role than most people realize this upcoming season. Sam Merrill, Tristan Thompson, and last but not least, Craig Porter Jr., CPJ. All got to have love for CPJ for what he was able to do in his breakout rookie campaign, converting over his contract from that two-way deal. Very, very happy about the undrafted gem that we got at him. But my question stands. What would you like to see this team do with the remaining roster spots? Is it bringing Isaac Okoro back to shore up number 14 and then just leaving that 15th spot open for flexibility come the trade deadline or the buyout market? Is it Knicks the idea of bringing back Okoro completely and use the money that you would have given him on the qualifying offer or whatever contract that you would have given him amongst the remaining free agents? There are a couple of directions they could go in, I suppose, but I still believe the most realistic is Isaac being brought back and them leaving that final spot open. But what say you? What do you believe the Cavaliers should do with spots number 14 and 15, if anything at all, for that last remaining spot? Now, my next question for you is, what are your honest expectations for this team during the 2024-25 season? Now, to me, I guess this is sort of a loaded question, and, take that for what you will. But I'm essentially asking you, what has to happen this year in order for you to feel like this season will have been a success? Is it making it to the Eastern Conference Finals? Is it advancing further than a second round series? And, maybe we got the short end of the stick, or maybe we didn't against Boston, because people are going to think whatever they want in regards to the injuries and the quality of the competition. And, it is really up to you on what type of opinion you want to formulate on that. But I tend to believe that this Cleveland Cavaliers team has to, at the very least, make a competitive 7-game series in the second round at the very least, and it has to come against one of the Eastern juggernauts, whether that be Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Boston. It's one of those teams at the very least. Now, I would be ecstatic if they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that is a perfectly reasonable possibility at this point in time. I'm not going to say it is the expectation, because this is going to be the first year of the Kenny Atkinson era, but I do believe the team has the pieces in place to make a real run. I want to hear from you, though. What is your expectation for this team? And don't even think about it in just terms of how far we advance in the playoffs. I get that is important. We want to see that tangible evidence, but I also want to know, is there a developmental aspect to this too? Do you want to see a particular player break out, as we say all the time? And with Kenny Atkinson and company being brought to town, we know that player development is going to be a major, and I mean a heavy focus. It should be It should be a heavy focus this year on players like Darius Garland and Evan Mobley in particular. There are other players on this roster, honestly, from top to bottom, we should be focusing on developing our games. But I want to hear what your expectations are for the 2024-25 campaign are. My third question for you is, which player do you believe stands to benefit the most from the new coaching staff? And feel free to pause on any one of these questions, by the way. I probably should have said that. But at the end of the day, I want to know who you think stands to benefit the most from adding a Kenny Atkinson and a Jordan Ott and a Johnny Bryant and a DeMarre Carroll, among others. Who stands to benefit the most? In my opinion, I think it's Evan Mobley. Or at the very least, that's who I want it to be. I want Evan to take that jump to being our second best player. The defense, it's there. It's Defensive Player of the Year worthy already. The offense, that's where we are currently waiting for him to break out, right? Whether that be developing a completely reliable three-point shot, and I don't know if he's going to get enough touches to be able to confirm or deny that this season, but I still believe that there's the possibility for that. Is it the mid-range area? Is it being able to consistently put the ball on the floor and attack defenses inside? Is it facilitation out of the elbows, the post, or at the top of the arc? Is it something else that you want to see from him? But I still believe that Evan Mobley is going to be the biggest beneficiary of this coaching staff change. And that is no shade at JB Bickerstaff, but from Kobe Altman's mouth, you heard it, right? Player development kind of went by the wayside. We got away from doing that when we should have been doing that all along with this young core that we have. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. But I want to hear from you. Who stands to benefit the most from the coaching staff being changed? Next question, number 4. Do you believe that the roster that enters the regular season will be the exact same one that enters the playoffs? And that might be a tough question to answer right now because we still don't have a resolution on Isaac Okoro's contractual situation. But I do tend to believe that Isaac is going to return. And assuming that is the case, that leaves 14 spots taken. You have your 3 two-ways taken and 1 spot open. So let's just assume that that's what we have right now, because that's all that we really can do. Do you believe that players like Caris LeVert, who I still believe is a major trade chip, and depending upon how Jalen Tyson is progressing throughout the season, I still believe that this could very well end up being Caris LeVert's final season in Cleveland? Do you believe that players like Caris or Dean or George Niang, Tristan Thompson, who we just learned has a provision or clause in his contract that will now allow him to be traded? Now, he came back, should I say, on that 1-year contract, but he does not have the ability to deny a trade. So could he be gone come midseason, depending upon how things are progressing? Let me know, because I think the team that enters the playoffs, in my opinion, I do not believe the roster that enters day 1 is not going to be the same one that enters by the time the playoffs roll around. But that's just me. Number 5, my final question for you. Will Jalen Tyson make an impact from day 1? That, to me, that's a heavy one. That is one that I'm really, really counting on being answered early on in the season, because Jalen Tyson, to me, was the biggest acquisition of this offseason. It's been a quiet one, right? It's been one mostly centered around retaining our core, whether that be extending Jarrett Allen's contract, adding more years and more value to him, whether that be extending Donovan Mitchell, a player that many people thought was not long for Cleveland, and we know how all that turned out. And then you still have Darius Garland under contract, and Evan Mobley has also been given an extension. This offseason has mainly been about retaining talent, and that could very well hold true for Isaac Okoro as well. So Jalen Tyson, will he be afforded enough minutes to be able to actually prove that he can be impactful? I tend to think so, because Kenny Atkinson is very different from JB Bickerstaff in the thought process of going deep into your roster, deep into your rotation. I think it'll be more commonplace to see more 9, 10, maybe even 11-man rotations on nights when things are going well. But do you believe that Jalen Tyson will end up being an impact player from day 1? And I suppose this is kind of connected to the previous question, because for me, I think he He will end up making Karis LeVert expendable come the trade deadline. That's just me. But I loved what I saw out of this young man's game at Cal. I loved what I saw in Summer League. And I think that he is going to end up being a cost-effective, very similar player to Karis LeVert. Their games are not exactly the same, but they do a lot of the same things. And I do ultimately believe that they could fill basically the same role. And so I think those minutes will eventually be given to Tyson. I think LeVert will eventually be moved. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys feel? Do you think Jalen Tyson will make an impact from day one? That said, go Cavs.